One of the most important things you can do for success on Google Ads is going to be optimizing down your campaigns after you run them and get data based off of what works. Now, Google is a little bit more unique of a platform compared to Facebook, where Facebook does a really great job with their algorithm and optimizing down through the algorithm, whereas Google, you have to be more hands-on in a lot of cases. And it does differ based off the different products you have, what you're trying to market. But a lot of the times, most success as far as ROI and making the campaigns more profitable and scaling them will come down to actually manually optimizing the different campaigns you're running. So what I want to do in this video is talk a little bit about each campaign type, where you're going to go to optimize them, what you're going to do, what levers are most important to pull, KPIs that are important you can pay attention to per campaign type, and really how they operate. Because like I said, when it comes to Google by nature is a lot harder on the front end to get success. Not necessarily harder in the sense where it's impossible, but you have to go through a lot more testing and you have to sacrifice a lot of wins and losses to get those wins. But on the back end, it curves up really nicely and you have a lot of consistency, where once you find what works and scale it up and reach those plateaus in each avenue that we talk about when it comes to scaling horizontally, you're gonna have a lot of consistency there. You're not gonna have campaigns crash and burn like you would on the other platforms. So it's a really, really great way to get a really solid foundation of revenue for your e-com store. And when you do this, you're not gonna have to worry about more of the volatility when it comes to some of the other platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and such. So let's go into the first thing, which is gonna be search. Now, search is very black and white. We talk about this a lot, but when it comes to search, there's really three areas that you're gonna pay attention to. One's gonna be the keywords. After the keywords, it's gonna be the ads. And then the last thing is going to be landing page assets. Now, when it comes to each of these, they're all part of the same puzzle, right? Because they'll intertwine in some way, but they're also relatively linear, right? Because somebody has to go from searching a keyword to then looking at the ad, to then going to the actual landing page and making a conversion happen. And there's certain KPIs that you can use to understand the bottleneck of each one and where you need to put your attention. So when it comes to keywords, the biggest thing you're looking for isn't so much about statistics that are gonna come through data-wise. It's more about the quality of what terms are showing for the keyword you're targeting. And there are gonna be important things like click-through rate and cost per click. Cost per click is gonna be most relative to keyword, but I would say until the stage of really optimizing, really what you're looking for on the keyword side is the quality and flow of traffic coming through, and then you can work down on cost. So it's kind of like a two-layer type of optimization phase. So keyword's gonna be really going down and boiling down to quality. The way you'll be able to see the quality is going to the search term report. So there's two different types of keywords. There's going to be the keywords you're targeting and then the search terms. And search terms are what people actually type in that trigger based off your keywords. And depending if you're using broad match, phrase match, exact match, the quality and strength of your search term report is going to differ. So you really want to go in there and see, okay, I'm trying to target this keyword. Is that actually the term I'm ranking for? And if it's not, what do I have to do to fix that? So it's a great way, and you might be surprised because you might go to that search term report, and even though you're targeting a bunch of keywords that make sense, what you're actually getting could be completely different. And that's where you can really optimize down on the quality and figure out, okay, do I have to increase the match type? Do I have to add more negative keywords, which we're gonna talk about? Do I just need to pause keywords because they're bringing in really junky traffic? So that's gonna be the first step. That leads into what negative keywords are. Negative keywords is really the inverse of keywords. So keywords is gonna be what you're targeting. Negative keywords is what you don't wanna target. So what you're gonna do is as you go through the search term report and you see good keyword, good keyword, and that flip-flop, you're gonna take those bad keywords and add them as negative keywords to your campaign to make sure you don't show for them again. What's gonna happen is over time, you're gonna get a lot of those negative keywords in and you're gonna stop showing for most of the negative terms that you don't wanna show for. And then you're just gonna have all positive ones, and that's gonna cut your costs down a lot. Because if it takes, let's say, 10 clicks to get somebody to convert on the website, and it really takes 20 clicks because half of them are bad, over time, if you can eliminate those other 10 bad ones, then you're paying for half of what it would cost to convert that person. Next is gonna be ads. Ads is gonna be most relevant to click-through. So like if the quality of keywords there, and you're looking at just the click-through rate of the keyword you're going after, and let's say it's below 2%, generally 2 to 3% is gonna be an average, an okay average when it comes to click-through rate. But you usually gonna wanna aim for about 3 to 5%. Anything above that's great, right? Usually when you're getting to like the 5 to 15%, that's gonna be more on like warm or branded traffic. But if you're going after cold competitive traffic and you're sitting between 3 to 5% on the click-through rate, that's a good zone to be in. If you're below that, that's when you're gonna really wanna work on the ad copy. A lot of the times that comes down to relevancy. So if you go in your ads, you're looking for areas to optimize, and you see one ad is getting a 2% click-through rate, the other ad's getting 5%, obviously turn off the 2% one. That's not to take into account conversions, right? Because you could have an ad that has a lower click-through rate, but it actually has a higher conversion rate, so it's more profitable. So pay attention to that. But if you see ads and ad copy that's clearly bringing in lower click-through rates and lower conversion rates, and obviously a higher CPA, those are what you're gonna wanna turn off. And if you don't have multiple running at the same time, and you see those bad numbers, then you're gonna wanna wash in new ad copy, right? And see if you can get those numbers up. So that's where you're gonna really want to focus on for ads. And then landing page assets is really gonna be conversion rate. And then obviously CPA, which is cost per acquisition. That's gonna be the cost of converting somebody. And those are hand in hand, right? Because they work together. Higher the conversion rate, lower the CPA. Conversion rate along with the cost of traffic is what creates CPA. So these are the areas you wanna look at. But if cost per traffic's there and the quality of traffic's there, but things are too expensive because the conversion rate's too low, that's where you're gonna wanna say, okay, everything on the ad platform is great. Now what do we have to do on the actual asset side to make the conversion rate go up and get that CPA down? Because that's gonna be the biggest lever there. So those are really how those three things work together. You're really just diagnosing and looking at all those three different areas and figuring out where the issue is. If there's an issue there, then you start attacking that as the bottleneck. If everything's great across the board and there's nothing else you can work on lever-wise and traffic's just too expensive, then you have to start looking at, okay, picking and choosing what you can go after cost-wise when it comes to cost per click. We have a great video on keyword math to really do the math backwards and figure out your most expensive cost per click tolerance, and that'll help in this situation too. But if all else is amazing and you just can't get it to work, it's probably gonna be too expensive of traffic to go after. Or you can keep working on the other things as bottlenecks, but there's gonna be certain areas where you can get them as good as possible, and then the rate of increasing them is gonna really plateau and you're not gonna have as much of a lever there. So that's a whole nother conversation, but in most cases, if things aren't efficient enough or effective enough in the campaign, there's gonna be one area in the campaign that you can start working on. Next is gonna be PMAX. Now, PMAX is a little bit different because it's not as clean cut as search, for example. PMAX is a little bit more of a gray area because they haven't made it super clear on reporting between different assets, search terms, everything that shows up, where when it comes to search, you can see very clearly what's coming through with traffic quality, what's being targeted, things of that nature. PMAX is a little more jumbled. But that being said, there's still levers you can pull to make it better. The first is gonna be asset groups. So when it comes to asset groups, really what you're looking for is, are the assets that are within the asset group actually doing the job and getting people to the website at an efficient rate and also converting them? So there's a report you can go to, which is actually gonna break down per asset how they're doing compared to others. So really what you can do is, because it's so subjective to the industry you're going after and these numbers fluctuate a lot, I would base it off of the higher average between your own actual assets, and then find, based off that average on the lower end, what you can start swapping and replacing. It would make it a lot easier to have a blanket number to reference things off of, but because these numbers are so subjective to the types of products you're running and also the way you're categorizing asset groups in the PMAX, the best thing you can do is really base it off of your own data, and you'll get an idea of that as you look through the statistics per each asset. But that's gonna be a great area to look, and you'll see actual assets that are getting a lot of spend but aren't yielding any kind of conversions or like too high of a CPA. And those are the ones you're gonna wanna pause and be able to swap out to have new ones come into play. The other area is gonna be actual product category groups. And product category groups are very similar. Product, we'll just put category groups. And these are very simple because you're gonna have the categories based off of grouping as products, very clean cut, whether or not they're fitting within your KPIs. So this is one other area that you're gonna wanna focus on. If categories of products or certain products are not operating the way they should, as far as the KPIs that you need, there's not a ton you can do to make them better. The biggest leverages really are just like, the feed that's coming through, and then also the images and assets you're using for those feeds. But a lot of the times they're gonna be pretty solid. You don't have a ton of control with creativity and pictures. A lot of the times they're being pulled from your website assets. So you don't have a lot of leverage there. The best thing you can really do is just optimize down what products aren't converting and let the spend go to the ones that are. And that way you have things scaling towards the product categories that are gonna yield you the most money. If you don't do that, it's just gonna kind of keep washing budget around, and it's gonna give more of the control to the Google side and let the platform make those decisions, where in reality, you wanna control where the money's going, which is what we talk about a lot. Last is gonna be demographics. So demos are a bit late game when it comes to PMAX and also search. We didn't talk about demos too much on the search side. A lot of the times demos aren't super prioritized to optimize down on the search side, because if somebody's searching a keyword, they have the intent behind that keyword. So you don't necessarily need to filter out certain people, because they could be a man, woman, different age, whatever they are, they're searching that keyword because they have the intent. That's the most important thing. With PMAX, it's going after people in more of a audience-based way. So it's not always intent-driven. So this is where you can mess around with this a bit more. That being said, this is very late game. Anytime we touch demos, even on the YouTube side, which we'll talk about, it's gonna be later in the optimization stages. When I say later, this isn't within the first couple of weeks of running the campaign. I would say probably after a month of running the actual campaign type, because what's gonna happen is if you limit too many things that are broad on the algorithm-based campaigns, it makes the campaign go a little haywire and it doesn't work with the algorithm as well. So really what you wanna do is let it run for an amount of time to get very conclusive data on what to include and what not to include, and then make those changes. If you know you're selling something that only one gender buys or only one age group buys, okay, that's a situation where it makes sense to do this early. But in most cases, you want the data to tell you what's likely to actually turn off. And that's gonna be after getting plenty of data to make those conclusions. Last is gonna be YouTube. Now, YouTube with eCom is tricky. It's probably one of the hardest things to crack. But when you crack it, it's very blue ocean, because a lot of people don't put the work in to get to the point of actually cracking YouTube. So if you're the one to crack it in your niche, this is an area you can scale hard, just because there's not gonna be a ton of competition. It's kind of like playing between Google and Facebook. It takes a lot more work on the front end. It does have a little bit more volatility than the Google side. It just kind of has a mix of pros and cons between the two. So normally when it comes out to scaling an account, YouTube's gonna be very late game. We talk about in other strategy videos, certain areas of YouTube that are approachable on the front end that you wanna run next to what's working on the PMAX side, search side, and things of that nature. But when it comes to scaling into cold audiences, a lot of the times you're gonna wanna do that on the back end of the strategy, just because it has a little bit more ad spend risk. And whenever it comes to tolerance risk, you wanna make sure to always prioritize what's gonna yield you results logically based off of probability of success first, and then go to the things that are more broad, a little bit more dangerous money-wise, more risk, more reward, right? So when it comes to YouTube, the two biggest leverages is gonna be your assets, which I'll just call videos. And this is gonna be a mix of horizontal and vertical. And then the other one's gonna be audiences. One thing that's nice about YouTube is it doesn't roll up to success. If it doesn't start working on the front end, it generally is not gonna work at all. So you don't need to spend a ton of money per test to see whether something's working or not. Really what you should do is get the test done on the front end, and then within a couple days, at least maybe 4 to 5 days at most, you should see KPIs, click-through rate, conversion rate, CPA, that are indicators that it should make sense to keep putting money into them. If you're not seeing those KPIs, then likely you're gonna wanna cut off that test and test something new. When it comes to the KPIs you're gonna look for, really on the YouTube side, engagement's a huge tell. A lot of the times engagement will correlate heavily to success on the back end. And when it comes to YouTube, click-through rates, generally gonna wanna be around 1%. If you're below 1%, not the biggest deal, but if you start getting below like 0.7%, 0.6%, that's when you're in the danger zone and cost per conversion becomes too expensive. And then when it comes to conversion rate, you're probably gonna have a little bit lower conversion rate, but you're still gonna wanna base this off of the average conversion rate of your store. If you can get it higher and you get a really great niche traffic, amazing, but there's not really a unique conversion rate to YouTube. It's more gonna correlate with what's already happening on your actual store conversion rate. So next is gonna be audiences. Same exact thing with videos. Audiences, if they don't work on the front end, you're gonna wanna make sure to cut off quickly and test the next audience. One thing to know about optimizing audiences is you can't go in with huge assumptions. Of course, you wanna base off the audiences you're gonna test with things that you can kind of correlate to the brand, deducting based off of what works on the other platforms. But you wanna test a ton of different things. You wanna test in-market, affinity, custom search terms, custom website. There's probably 6 to 7 different types of audiences you wanna test. And then based off those audiences, you're gonna start honing down. Generally, the progression of optimization happens where you take your best ads, you're gonna test the best audiences. Based off those audiences, and you find, let's say, 2 out of 10 work the best, then you're gonna take those 2 out of 10 and run those against a bunch of different ad tests. And then based off those ad tests, you're gonna keep chopping it down into more granular levels. After your ad test, where you find these are the types of ads that work the best, and these are the type of audiences that work the best, that's where you're gonna get into actual demos and start cracking down on those. And then it's gonna be really a game of testing, right? Because when you have audiences that have been proven, video types have been proven, and then the demos within YouTube that are proven as well, then it's a matter of just consistently testing more and more out of those. You can chop up more of the audiences into more granular audiences. You can group them together depending on the types you're using. On the video side, you can test different hooks, bodies, based off of the ones that are working best. And then on the demos as well, you can start the YouTube campaigns with the demos that you know are working on the other campaign side. So this is an area that's a little bit different than the PPC and PMAX side, but it's also not the same as Facebook. So you gotta have to kind of have both in mind and meet in the middle there. So there's a lot more to the strategy of each of these areas. We won't go into that in this video. We have other videos that talk about it. We're also gonna keep releasing more and more strategic content based off of what we learn with our clients. We spend about 1.5 mil a month with our eCom clients profitably. So we're constantly putting out new strategy ideas that we find work in the accounts that we run. So make sure to like and subscribe if you like this video. We always appreciate that. If you have any questions about specific optimizations you're wondering about in your account, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you would like to email us and you want to be a little bit more private with your data, feel free to shoot us an email at admin@adsrunning.com. I'll check out the data personally and give you my feedback. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video.